Hello folks, R1 here. That is a BF-110, but I'm not the pilot. This is a replay submission from Guy Pennington. Guy had an interesting match, and I thought that you might enjoy it, so I've decided to share it with you. The match is in arcade mode, and we're using the playback system, which is much better now, but there are some things that are lacking, so we'll try and fill in the details as best we can as we go along. You'll notice some differences in how Guy plays his matches compared to how I do. We are both team players in that we will make sacrifices when necessary to try and ensure a team victory. Guy, though, is a bit more aggressive than I am, at least than I usually am. Now, he has just entered into a head-on with an F4F that he shot down, but the F4F pilot yanked his nose up at the last moment, catching Guy in the midsection to tail section and taking him out as well. Possibly a wise move. That BF-110 is a dangerous aircraft, so Guy has jumped into a Stuka, and he's going to attempt to make a ground kill contribution to the team. Now, Guy is not a big fan of ground strike missions, but when he does get those missions in the rotation, he does try to do his best to do his part. Sometimes his natural aggressive instincts as a pilot take over, though, as you'll see during the course of this match. At the moment, Guy is looking for ground targets, and his eye is inevitably drawn to the lone airborne target below him. He brings his Stuka down to attempt to engage, but the target has been killed by a couple of his teammates. Just as well, the Stuka is not really the best for dogfighting, although at times they can be a surprisingly nimble and dangerous opponent. He has retained his bomb, and he's turning his attention toward other targets of opportunity. When I first watched this replay, I was a bit confused as to why he was heading in this direction. I did not see any ground targets over here. And then I realized there were two aerial targets in play, dogfighting with some of his teammates, and his natural aggressive tendencies have pulled him to it irrevocably. Now, Guy knows his firepower is a bit limited in this Stuka, so he attempts to dive in to finish off his counterpart in a Stuka below. His tail gunner opens up on someone behind him, though, and he wheels to turn with any potential threats. His original target chooses that moment to make an opportune and wise escape from the area. Now Guy is caught between a rock and a hard place. He has a buffalo on his tail, and he's still wanting to help his teammate with that CR-42 ahead of him. It's an awkward position to be in, but the buffalo overshoots, and Guy immediately starts unloading into the fuselage of the aircraft. If this buffalo keeps turning, he should be able to stick with him. I think that's the same Stuka, smoking, coming back for another run. I think Guy's tail gunner is going to put a few more rounds into that Stuka. Oh, but he also has a yak behind him. And Guy again finds himself in the middle of a bad situation. Catches fire. He doesn't give up. He keeps maneuvering wildly and attempting to shake his antagonist from behind, putting some shots into anything that he can. Knowing he's in trouble, he drops his bomb on a convenient ground target, hoping for at least one ground kill before he goes down. Although his fire has gone out, his plane is not in good shape, and he takes even more hits as he rounds on his opponents. He keeps moving, keeps turning, trying to leverage the advantages that the Stuka has in that turning fight, and swing around behind that buffalo again, but that yak is coming around on him again, and it has him squarely in his sights. A lucky hit on the wing, and down Guy goes. Currently, Guy has 2 deaths now, but he's also picked up 2 kills in the meantime, as well as an assist. Not too bad. The battle at this point is very close between the 2 teams, so Guy elects to jump into another Stuka to assist them. Now I think at this point in the match, well, it's still very even, Guy has realized that these Stukas are really best employed in the ground attack role, and he can provide a more valuable contribution to his team than getting drawn into another dogfight. He's eyeing a column of tanks down there that are moving in his direction, but they are almost directly below his position already, and while the Stuka could dive that steeply, he elects to instead go for the stationary target ahead of him, the pillbox, which is a nice, fat, juicy target that his Stuka is extremely well equipped to take out. A direct hit, and that kill is going to help ensure victory for his team. As it turns out, this is a very, very tight match all the way through. Now, he's already picked up someone on his tail, but he doggedly continues to go after ground targets, utilizing that tight turning capacity the Stuka has to make himself a difficult target at the same time. Unfortunately, a Corsair comes in behind him and takes him out. Well, Guy has tried his best to be a team player. He really, really has. To help his team, he resigned himself to going after ground targets. But as the Scorpion said to the Frog, it's just not in his nature. He's a fighter pilot at heart, and he's about fed up with the way this match has gone so far. So he jumps in a Fulgar, one of my favorite planes, a little Italian fighter, and dives into the action. He's going to take a strafing run of opportunity on an enemy fighter as he goes by, but almost immediately finds himself drawn into a head-on with a Dornier, and somehow manages to survive it. He immediately reverses to close with his adversary and cuts it a little too close. Let's look at that again. He comes around using the Fulgor's excellent maneuverability and tries to bring his guns to bear on the Dornier, and holy smokes, that was close. That's about as close as you ever want to cut it in a combat situation. I'm amazed he didn't rip his wing right off. Did I mention that Guy's a bit on the aggressive side? The Fulgor is an interesting plane. It's primarily a boom and zoom aircraft, but especially in arcade mode, it does handle pretty nicely and can actually do some turn fighting. He's going to close on that Dornier and put some good hits into him, and that Dornier is on his way down. Unfortunately, Guy has taken some engine damage, and that is going to get worse as the match proceeds. And judging by the white smoke, it actually looks more specifically like he's losing coolant. So he's going to burn up his engine here relatively soon. Another head-on. Guy manages to survive that one as well. But his plane is starting to struggle just a little bit. Now, this is the last plane in Guy's hangar, or in his lineup for this match. So now he's faced with a quandary. Does he just keep fighting until the plane goes down? Or does he actually, which is unusual in an arcade match, does he elect to try and land and repair? Well, he's got a little bit of time left to make his decision. So for the moment at least, he leaves the airbase behind. Milking his engine as best he can, he makes one more strafing run on an American fighter that's coming in his direction. It looks like a Wildcat. Gets a few hits and then ends up going after a American dive bomber, TBF. Now this is an adversary that can soak up a lot of punishment. They are remarkably tough, And the Fulgore's weaponry is fairly light. 2 light machine guns, 2 heavy machine guns. So Guy pumps round after round after round into this fella, taking hits in return into his already damaged fighter. Guy is going to put everything he has into this attack, getting closer and closer, pouring round after round of ammunition in until he's just about to collide and manages to saw through the tail section of the dive bomber just before impact. That was a pretty lucky Guy. But now Guy has wrung the last life out of that Fulgore. He's going to crash if he doesn't land, so he comes in hot, trying desperately to burn off speed. Starts firing his weapons in an attempt to slow down so he can actually put this thing down on the runway. If he overshoots, he's probably not going to have enough left to swing around and make another pass. It's not looking too good. His tail is still up in the air. He stands on the brakes, and really he does the only thing he can before he shoots off the end of the runway. He puts his nose into it, which brings him to a screeching halt. He gets credit for a soft landing and is still close enough for repair. Now, unfortunately for Guy, there are still a lot of enemy aircraft in the area. There's also a fairly heavy, friendly fighter cap overhead. His companions are now moving to engage an enemy Corsair who attacks Guy on the ground, but Guy respawns just as the attack comes in. Unfortunately, the Corsair is still behind him and manages to put some shots into him on the airstrip. Friendly pilots get in behind the Corsair, and as Guy lifts off, the enemy Corsair heads into the turf. Again, that's cutting it pretty close, Guy. Fortunately, Guy is relatively unscathed. His plane is still in good shape, although I think it may have unnerved him just slightly, being attacked that closely on the runway. That was pretty nip and tuck. He doesn't even get a chance to get his flaps up before he's engaged again by an enemy fighter. Fortunately, he manages to get past him unscathed and continues to try and build up some altitude and airspeed. He was distracted briefly there. He's left his flaps down due to the excitement. He'll realize that in just a moment and correct that. There is heavy fighting in progress in the immediate area, and it's only moments later when Guy is engaged yet again. This time around, Guy quite wisely leaves that airplane to the gentlemen that are already on its tail and gets some altitude and airspeed built up. He's not going to be a whole lot of help to his team if he continues to fly low and slow, so that's probably a wise move. He doesn't have to travel far before he sees the next furball on the horizon. An enemy biplane is traveling in the same direction he is, so he drops down in behind it, reduces speed, and brings his guns to bear, barely missing that BF-110. Chews him up pretty good. He's corrected his flap error and performs a yo-yo maneuver with a flourish so that he can come down on the biplane from above and behind. Now, I don't know if you've been counting, but that's 5 air kills, 5 assists for Guy so far, not counting the 2 ground kills he had from earlier. That's a pretty good comeback from a bad start, but he's not done yet. Although he is leaking coolant again, Guy seems to go through a lot of engines. But the high cost of maintenance is the price you pay for being an aggressive fighter pilot. He swings in behind this A5M4. Which is a very, very nimble and dangerous aircraft for him to engage. He turns with it and almost gets lined up for a shot anyway, but then has to level out and gain some range. He's not going to be successful in a turn fight with that particular fighter. So he lets the Fulgore stretch its legs and build up some airspeed and altitude. Now I can see him considering going up after this OS-2U. Or really any ground attack aircraft. The match is very, very close at this point. And Guy knows that if he's not going to do ground attack, the next best thing that he can do is to take out ground attack aircraft or bombers. So he goes hunting. Again, he's in a situation where he only has a limited amount of time before he burns that engine out. So he builds up as much airspeed and altitude as possible, looking for his next target. It doesn't take long before he spots some friendly aircraft fire and manages to home in on a HE-111 bomber. Oh, the Fulgore's weapons aren't the best for taking out a bomber, but they can chew up a 111. It's not the most robust bomber in the game. He puts a lot of good hits into it and tears up its control surfaces. The bomber does manage to hit a ground target on the way down, blowing himself up in the process, and because Guy got in some good shots, giving yet another kill to Guy. That's 6. His engine seems to be holding out for now, so he decides to gain altitude again. He's going to need that energy bank if he's going to survive the upcoming conflict. The match is extremely close, and there are a disturbingly large number of enemy aircraft left in the fight. Now, Guy could go and land again and repair, but looking at the ticket counter, this match could end at any moment. So he decides to try and hang in there for the rest of the fight. He sees another target dead ahead and starts building up airspeed in the dive to go after him. He'll take some shots on his way through. But that Corsair already has 2 or 3 friendly pilots on him, so he decides not to waste his time with that and converts that speed back into altitude. Besides, there's an unengaged aircraft directly ahead of him. It's just a biplane, but still, biplanes are good at taking out ground targets, and that's something that they can't afford right now. He misses on his first pass, and unfortunately, the biplane flips right around with the intent of getting on his tail. That's not good. But Guy is immediately joined by other members of his team that have done very, very well so far in this conflict, and they managed to get the biplane off of his butt. So he decides to play bait. He circles looking for an opportunity, knowing that other enemy fighters are closing in. There's an I-16 behind him and a Hawk following closely, but he manages to pick a shot and take that biplane out of the combat. This frees up his friendly pilots to engage the other aircraft that have come to join the party. Guy slots in behind a Hawk, which is another very agile and fast aircraft who excels at turn fighting, and Guy finds himself drawn into yet another turning battle. And that Hawk is not alone. There's quite a bit of combat going on up there, and Guy is not in a good position to help out. So he leaves that conflict behind quite wisely, allowing his turn fighting teammates to take care of that situation while he nurses his airplane away to build up some more airspeed and pick a better target of opportunity, which he almost immediately finds. Guy seems to have quite the knack for finding trouble. With barely a pause for breath, Guy engages again. And yet again, Guy finds himself in the middle of a swirling furball. Some of the fighters that were engaging his allies have followed him in that direction. His teammates have followed, and try as he might, he can't seem to disengage from being in the center of action. There's an I-16 that has made a pass at him and is now running for it at low altitude. Guy put some good shots into him, but his plane is beginning to finally play out on him. It's losing power and it's losing maneuverability. He brings the nose around, manages to get back behind the I-16 and just shred his tail surfaces, and he goes down. Guy's belly skims the dirt as he manages to pull the plane back up into the air, seemingly by sheer effort of will. He narrowly avoids being in the crosshairs of yet another enemy fighter as his engine slowly starts to die. And there's the end of the match. He's managed to survive it and just barely keep his plane in the air. That's 8 kills, 7 assists, 2 additional ground kills for his 3 deaths. That's pretty respectable. And even if you can remember matches that have higher kill counts than that, you have to admit that was pretty action-packed. Thanks for the subscriber submission, Guy. It was my pleasure to put it on my channel. And if you have a replay that you think is really good, go ahead and send it to me. My email address is in the About section of my YouTube channel. War Thunder replays are pretty small, and you should be able to email it without too much difficulty. Just do me a favor and put your War Thunder call sign in the email along with a brief description of the key points of the battle, and I'll see what I can do. Well, that's going to be it for now. Thanks a lot to everyone, and until I see you again, good hunting.